So this week I'm going to show how to make a Photoshop template using clipping masks for your images, and next week I'm going to create another one showing how to use smart objects. But let's get started this week. First thing I'm going to do is create a new document. I'm going to go with a fairly large size document. This is 3600 by 3600 pixels at 300 ppi because I like to have I'd rather have it larger and then resize down if I need to, as opposed to trying to go the other way knowing that there's going to be limitations in pixel loss. So the first thing I want to do, I'm just going to assume for the moment that I'm going to have a solid color background layer. And because I want to do this quick and easy, I'm going to add a solid color adjustment layer. I'll set it to white and say OK. And the reason I do it this way is it's much quicker to come over on the thumbnail and click and change the color and say OK than it is to fiddle around with any of the other methods. They all work, but this is quicker. The next thing I'm going to do is name that layer background, and I'm going to put it in a group, call it background. I like to name things, I like to keep them organized, because when I come back to this file in a few months it's much easier to figure out what's going on. So now I have my background layer, and I'm going to start to create the shapes that are for my images. There's several different ways to create images. Well, there's a dozen or more. You could use a marquee tool, you could use Photoshop brushes, you could use vector images, you could use PNG or JPEG. You can use anything you want. You can also use, come down to the custom shape tool, and you can come up if you have any. I have some different box shapes. Let me grab that one. The fill color doesn't really matter, because this is just going to be used as a clipping mask, but I'll set it to black. Make sure it's set to shape, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw a shape. Hit the enter key, and these are going to be essentially the Lego building components we use to lay out our images. And the cool thing about using this vector shape is I can control T, and I can resize if I want to, and like I said, it's vector, so it's not going to hurt anything. And maybe I want another one on the right side, so a quick and easy thing to do is hold down the Alt key, because that'll let me duplicate, and Shift so that when I drag it, it'll stay aligned. I have another one on the right side. Maybe I want that only half size or whatever. I can bring it down, make it a little smaller. I can rotate it if I want. I can do whatever I want to them. And basically I just keep going like this, laying them out however I need. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that's it. I'm going to name them also, so this is, well, I'm going to learn how to type as I name them. So that'll be the left side, that'll be the right, and then I'll select both and put them in a group, and I'll have this as images. Next thing I want to do is get some images for these clipping masks I've created. So I'm going to select the left one first, and then I'm going to come over to Bridge, find an image, and I'm going to click and drag it over to Photoshop. Drop it in. Now I have everything come in as a smart object, so it goes through Camera Raw. If you have this step, great, and if not, that's okay too. So your image comes in, and I'm going to go ahead and resize this to fit a little better, because these are high-res images and I know it's not going to hurt it. Hit enter to accept, and you can see my canvas is up now. A quick and easy way to move this down: hold down the space bar and use your left mouse button to drag it around. And now, with your image layer selected and the image layer above the clipping mask shape, you can either right click, choose create clipping mask, you can go to the layer menu, choose create clipping mask, you can use a keyboard shortcut, or you can hold down the Alt key and click in between the two layers too. And then with that image layer and the move tool still selected, you can move the image around, place it where you want. I'm going to select the right shape now, go back to Bridge, grab another image, drop it in. I'm going to resize this, holding down the Shift key to keep it proportional, and also the Alt key to resize from the center. Drag it in a bit, hit enter, move it up a little, hold down the Alt key to clip it, and of course I can move that around and I can rotate it just like everything else if I wanted to. Place it in there. If you don't want that shape rotated anymore, you can control click on it and rotate it back. Put it square again if you want. Of course, you have to do that with the image too, or not. You may not want to. You might want to leave it rotated. I mean, that's up to you. This is all artistic to taste, whatever you want to do. You may even decide that that's not the image you want anymore. So you can delete it and go grab another image. I'll grab one, bring it in, do the same thing, clip it to that box, move it around. And now looking at this, I may decide that that white background's not working for me, so I can double click on it and I can pick a color, or I can go into the images themselves and sample from the images. That way I know I have a color that's in there, so I could choose that if I wanted to. If I don't want a solid color background, I could bring in a texture. I could put a texture in the background and adjust the colors necessary. I could change the opacity of the texture so it mixes with the color too. That's another option. I mean, anything you can do in Photoshop you can play in there. I can bring in an actual image and put it in the background. So that's another option. You know, again, playing with blend modes, changing the opacity and whatnot with the texture. So it's all up to you, whatever you want to play with, whatever you want to do. You're probably also going to want to add some text. And there's a couple ways, a quick and easy way to move the text without jumping out of the box and getting the move tool. Is you can see when you move outside of the text, it changes to an arrow. So I can grab the text and move it around if I want. I might want to go back in there and space this differently or whatever, and then hit Control Enter to accept. But you can add text, change the blend mode of the text or whatever you want to do. You can play around with it. You can also go in and grab images if you want to embellish it. So I'll grab these vines, bring that in, add it in, move it down to the bottom. You could grab a layer style real quick if you wanted to and do this the easy way. Let me see if I got something here. And you change it and that gives it a nice embossed effect. You can add whatever you want. It's all up to you. If you wanted to, you can even grab another PSD and drag it into your PSD if you wanted to use a frame on one of your images. You may not want to do that in this particular idea that I'm doing, but it's possible. So you can bring one in, put it in the right spot in your layers panel, of course. So that's another option, play around with stuff like that. Another option would be to grab a vector shape like this. I'm going to drag that into Photoshop, drop it in the middle, hit Control 0 so I can see the transform handles, Shift Alt and click from a corner to drag in from the center proportionally. Put it about right there. Go grab an image, drag that in, and I can clip that to that vector shape. Move it around a little bit so it's a little more centered, and that's another option. I could also select that vector image that I brought in, and with the magic wand tool I could click. I'm going to click on one of the outer parts of the circle, hold down Shift to grab the other two, and then I could grab a solid color adjustment layer. I'm going to pick a really bright color just so you can see what I'm doing, and then say OK. And you can mask out part of the shape like that if you want. Now clearly you would not use that obnoxious red. You'd grab something from the image or whatever. You could do something like that. So there's lots of ways to play with it. You know, now if you have it set up like this, you could realign the text and add it to the bottom or do something like that. So how you set it up and all the different pieces and parts and elements and components you add, that's all up to you. So here are some examples of ones that I've worked on, different templates I've created and worked with and stuff. This one for a football team started out with a tunnel shot and then added the school name on the wall and the player and then put the one on the ground. This one I set up a template for a it was a local concert at the Roseland, so once I had the basics of the layout, the text, and the background selector, it was real easy to swap out the musician in different various poses. The only pain on these were the images it gave me, the background was incredibly busy, so I had to use a pen tool, which took me a minute, but that's another one. This is a kind of a template that people would see a lot. Images, background image, couple of boxes, these are overlapped. Put the images in them. You can see there's some little embellishments going on. This is another example. You know, these are rectangles, and then the image is placed in them clearly, but there's also a mask on the image within the rectangle. So there's all different ways you can do it. You can set it up however you want, do whichever you want to do. And once you have it set up, you know, it's just a matter of swapping images out. You can add vector images on it if you want. All sorts of different ways to set it up. So the best part is once you get it set up, save your templates, and then you can just swap images and change text as needed. And it makes it really quick and easy. I also, these were sort of templates. They started out as templates, but then when we started playing around with for the different teams and whatnot, it didn't work so much, clipping masks. So some of these are, they're still masks in essence, but they were added to the shapes so that you can blend things together and play with the blend modes and stuff like that. And we had a consistent color theme for the particular school that we were doing this for. You know, another example that once you get the wall and the floor set up and the text, once you get the layout set up, then it's just a matter of swapping your players in and out. These were, well, I had to swap out stock images for the real guys, but these were for an ad campaign, and once we got the layout set up, then it was just swap the players in and out, and then color match. So templates, you can set them up however you want. Just remember to keep it non-destructive.